Members, we're ready to start the meeting. Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Committee. Welcome also to those watching the meeting on YouTube. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked to please ensure that their mobile phones are placed in silent mode. Only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream, and therefore please ensure they are switched on when speaking and switched off when you have finished speaking. Minutes will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time as the minutes are produced. The first item on today's agenda is the appointment of the Chairman for the municipal year 2025-2026. Do I have a proposer, please?
Councillor Ms French.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? In the absence of any further nominations, Councillor Kim French is appointed as the Chair of the Audit and Risk Management Committee for the municipal year 2025-2026. I'll now hand over the conduct of the meeting to the Chair. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Member Services. Thank you, members. I will begin with agenda item 2 and call upon Member Services to report any apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillor Mockett. Councillor Tini is attending today as a substitute member. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of Vice Chairman for the municipal year of 25-26. I would like to nominate Councillor Benny. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs French, thank you. Are there any other nominations? No. In the absence of any further nominations, Councillor Benny is appointed as the Vice Chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee for the municipal year of 25-26. Agenda item 4 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting of the 12th of May 25 as being a correct record. Do I have a proposer for these minutes, please? Councillor Christie, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs French, thank you. Does any member have any comments to make on these minutes? No. Can I have a show of hands to approve these minutes, please? Thank you, members. The minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of May 2025 are therefore agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is to report additional items for consideration which the Chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. I believe there are none today. Agenda item 6 is to receive any declarations of interest under the Local Code of Conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please raise your hand. There are no raised hands. Thank you. Agenda item 7 is a verbal update on mandatory training. I now call upon Sam Anthony, Head of HR, to provide the update.
Thank you, Chair. The committee have asked for an update on mandatory training. Just by way of context and a bit of background, we implemented a new HR and payroll system in the last financial year, and as part of that there was a new learning platform implemented, and as such that new system has provided quite an extensive suite of e-learning materials, some 200 different topics that were part of the new system. At the beginning of this financial year, we launched that to the rest of the workforce, and there's some 20 within that which we have determined as mandatory training, and those titles are Avoiding Bribery Risks and Risks, the Bribery Act, Bullying and Harassment, Data Protection, Dealing with Stress, Display Screen Equipment and Workstation Safety, Domestic Abuse Awareness, which is a relatively new one, because I don't know if you're familiar, we have recently got the DAHA, which is the Domestic Abuse Housing Accreditation. So that's a relatively new mandatory training session. Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Fire Wardens, Health and Safety for Home Workers, Health and Wellbeing, Safeguarding Children, Safeguarding Vulnerable Adults, Sexual Harassment in the Workplace, which you will be aware that there's recent law changes on that to make that a higher priority for all employers. Stress Awareness, the Armed Force Covenant, again, that's a relatively new one because of our commitment to employing ex-army. The Freedom of Information, Unconscious Bias, whistleblowing, governance, risk and compliance, and workplace safety. So we started that at the beginning of the financial year, and the target was for everyone to complete that within a year. I'm happy to say that we are over 50% complete already for the workforce, with the exception of the domestic abuse awareness and the Armed Forces Covenant, which is sitting at 33% completion rate, but they were started a bit later. So we're 50% or more. In some cases it's higher than that, and we'll continue to monitor that on a monthly basis with the workforce to make sure we achieve that 100% compliance and 100% completion by the end of the financial year. That's really where we are, and happy to bring updates to Audit and Risk Committee as we go along. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any questions? Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Sam. It seems an awful lot of work that officers are going to do this. I know Peter's there. Do we actually have enough staff to carry out all these changes?
Thank you. I think that's a good question. All these are e-learning courses, so each member of staff can complete it, and it's scheduled in time. So we make sure that they complete it during their working week, and that's why we've given them over a year to complete these courses, so it doesn't impact on the day job, and they continue to deliver service that they need to.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of courses there. Have you thought about having, like, I don't know, focuses on different months, different like e-learning modules? Because certainly what I've experienced at workplaces I've been, where you've got the deadline for the data protection 1 month, and then like a month later it might be, I don't know, the Armed Forces Covenant, for example. Have you thought about that to be able to manage it a bit better in future years?
I think that's a really good point. I think if the compliance completion rate were to drop, and at 50% more, it's quite encouraging that people are getting that done. But if there's a problem with that, I think that's something we can look at. What we're currently doing with health and safety courses is we're having a quarterly focus on certain things like lone working or fire wardens, so we can promote that as part of those quarterly focuses.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, just one question, Sam. For those staff that aren't office-based, do they have access to equipment to be able to complete those e-learning courses as well?
Yes, that's a really good point. All our staff have access to this app, so they can actually access it on their mobile phone as well as a computer. However, I do think it's reasonable that we provide that training in-house, so particularly for our refuse and cleansing, we're doing face-to-face micro sessions. So things like safeguarding children, they need to be aware of it, but they might not need to do the whole course. So we're delivering face-to-face sessions for those in their team meetings.
Councillor French and then Councillor.
Thank you. Can you tell us, do we have many officers still working from home?
Without the figures in front of me, Councillor, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but we roughly have about 50% occupancy in most of our buildings on a day-to-day basis. So still a significant amount of staff working from home or in an agile way.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, it was just on the modules. Are they tailored for different levels? So, for example, Armed Forces Covenant probably be more relevant to senior management to ensure it's being delivered, whereas, like, for example, the refuse collection teams, it's probably going to have very little impact on their day-to-day job because they're not likely to, for example, to be doing any recruitment or setting policy, for example.
Yes, I think that's a good point, and they are mandatory for the type of role that people do. So, for example, the workstation safety is not going to be relevant for refuse and cleansing, so it's not listed as a mandatory course. So it's actually per job role, if you like.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes, thank you. You sort of answered what I was going to say, because that seems like a hell of a lot of mandatory training for everyone to have to do. But if what you're saying is different areas of the council have different lists and not all of that, then that's much better. It still seems like a lot of things to expect a lot of staff to do, and I wonder if you do any work to see if the staff feel like they're getting value out of it, or if they feel like they're just being forced to do pointless training. I mean, I know that that's a school of thought, but I just wonder if you do any work to find out how people feel about it.
Also a good question. I think we do an evaluation process that we will complete, I think after the first year, to see what the value is. But certainly some of these mandatory courses are areas that we haven't really covered off robustly in the past, so things like bribery, aware of the Bribery Act and aware of individuals' responsibilities under that. It is kind of elevating their level of knowledge. I think the other thing to say is, with local government reform coming in the near future, 2 to 3 years. This is upskilling our workforce in readiness for that.
Sam, just a question regarding members. Has any of it been rolled out to members?
Excellent question. It is available to members, so if members want to do it, I think that would be an opportunity. If you'd like to make a recommendation that it's looked at, we can certainly have a look at that and make ideas about what's relevant.
Sorry, thanks. I think this has been a really good discussion because we've only rolled it out this year and it has already stimulated some debate and we've only got a verbal update. So when we produce a report, I'm not quite sure how much more that will entail. But just for your benefit, Councillor Tierney, I mean, when it looks like a lot of training, but a lot of these are 7-8 minute bite-size things. And so they're a lot high level for a lot of these. But if you need for your job to go into more depth, as Councillor Booth suggested, there's more in-depth training needed for job specific. So I think for some of these, a lot of it is awareness of. So, you know, you can do 3 or 4 in about 20 minutes. And I did mine, a lot of them in the evening, which I found quieter, but they're quite bite-sized chunks. So they're not asking someone to commit a day to do this, that or the other. And I think that's important as well.
Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you for the update, Sam. The update is therefore noted for information. Agenda item 8 is the Council's Corporate Risk Register update. And I'll call upon Sam again to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. So as the committee will be well aware, we bring updates to the Corporate Risk Register to you on a regular basis. And this one is no different. It provides you with the updates. So I would just skip to the updates if I may and avoid the background information because you'll be well aware of what the Corporate Risk Register does and what it's for. So if I can skip to page 21 of your pack, there is just one change, which is item number 3, the procurement and contract management, which is just a change of the current risk rating after the mitigation. So that's just gone down a bit, and that is an admin review of the mitigation. So that's just been amended. So I'll come on to that in more detail as I go through the report. So moving to page 25 of your reports, in green, the changes and comments and actions since the last review are the on risk 26, the financial outturn for the last financial year has resulted in a surplus. And we have now created a tracker which is used to evidence the potential benefits and cost savings from the transformation programme, which you know is ongoing, and it also tracks savings realised. We have created an additional resource authorisation form introduced to approve any resource, be that agency or new resource or temporary resources, which has to be approved by HR, Finance and CMT prior to that being taken forward. And we have now an updated debt management policy, which has been delivered. So they are the changes to that particular risk.
Yes, Councillor Booth.
Is it worth, if we've got any questions, covering them as we're going through each of these pages?
Are you happy with that? Yeah,
Otherwise,
make it a bit
we'll
easier.
be jumping back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just on the fact you've got those 3 additional controls. Are you going to put those into the mitigation column following like this publication, because they will now become effective controls that are going forward, aren't they? And also, does that not affect the scores?
The first answer is yes, and the second answer is we'll evaluate it at the next review to make sure that it has impacted on that before we amend the scores, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll have similar observations on other things. I won't repeat it on every app.
Moving on to page 27, again, the new actions. This is risk number 3. So following an audit of our contracts register in February, the actions identified to be followed up during an audit of procurement have now been completed and delivered. And an audit of our preparation for the Procurement Act was completed in 24-25, and this produced a reasonable assurance option with 6 actions. And actually, I should say, there's some considerable training that officers have undertaken as part of that, the new requirements of the Procurement Act. So that's that one. Moving on to page 28, Again, you have a green highlighted comment, which is new action. Internal audit of our preparedness to protect our systems and data was carried out in 2024, and recommendations from this have now been implemented. Moving on to page 29. Service business continuity plans will be reviewed over the coming months, and all updates completed will be done by September this year. Moving on to page 33 of your packs. So NAFN, so the National Audit Fraud Network, alerts are shared with us for awareness and action, allowing us to be alert to potential known fraud and to put prevention in place. And that information is now circulated from Deborah to us on a regular basis. An internal audit has been undertaken on declarations of interest, and improvement actions and an update of the code of practice are now underway to improve those declarations in that process. And mandatory online training courses.
Councillor Booth just asked a question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just on that new process, is that regarding officers or is that councillors as well? And what's that going to look?
With the declaration of interests. So I manage the declaration of interest for officers. So that process is now going to have an annual review. So where anybody declares an outside interest, for example, I'll give you a recent one where somebody becomes a school governor. So we record it, we keep it on their file, and now we'll undertake an annual review of it. For members, it's managed by member services. So it's not much different, it's just an annual review will be undertaken.
Okay, maybe we ought to just make the distinction in that mitigation then, I would have suggested, just to make it a little bit clearer. Because I think most people in local government probably think it's declaration of interest regarding councillors, if you're looking at it from the outside.
Yeah, it absolutely is for officers and councillors. So yes, good point, and I might make sure that's fed back. And the online courses we've spoken about, the mandatory online courses that have been introduced, which include anti-bribery and the bribery refresher course. And that, I believe, Chair, is it for the updates of the Corporate Risk Register.
Thank you, Sam. Could I propose of this report, please? Councillor Booth and a seconder? Councillor Mrs French. Obviously, the item is open for discussion, but if you've got any further comments or questions? No? Okay. Their recommendation is for the committee to approve the latest Corporate Risk Register. Please raise your hand if you disagree with this report. No, there are no raised hands. Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. Thank you. And yeah, you want to leave, Sam? Yeah, thank you. Take care. Agenda item 9 is the draft local code of governance. I now call upon Deborah Moss, Head of Internal Audit, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, councillors. So, local code of governance, we do already have one, but it's quite out of date. I couldn't actually find the date of when it was last updated, but what we have done here is to look at it and apply the new core principles based on the SIP for guidance. So, and they're listed in the report for you. So basically this is just going to update the code that we have, apply the new principles, and tell you that what arrangements we have in place and what evidence we have to satisfy that we are demonstrating against those good governance principles. This also underpins our annual governance statement. So within the governance statement, we say that we do an annual effectiveness review of our governance, and by going through this code and checking that everything is still as we've said it is in the actual code itself, that forms part of the effectiveness review itself. And I think Peter will touch on that when he talks about the AGS later. I don't particularly want to go through the whole code. At the moment, we've left it as a draft purely because there may be other items, other examples of evidence that we want to add in. So I think council, a committee here are to look through it, review it and approve it, but maybe give us authority to just add things in as and when they arise rather than wait for an annual review, if that makes sense. I'm not quite sure what else to say about it really. If you've got any comments about any of the descriptors or any of the principles or the evidence that are in there, then we can talk about that, but it is just the code.
Could I have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Booth and a seconder? Councillor Mrs French. The The item is open for discussion. Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you. With regard to the Constitution, we had a planning meeting last week and we had some confidential items on that, and I did suggest to the portfolio holder and the head of planning that this really doesn't need to come to committee, so it needs to be a change in the Constitution with regard to section 215 and 216.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, it's just a fairly minor point, but page 46 on the sort of first set of actions and controls, it mentions equality policy, and about 4 lines down it says quality, diversity and inclusion policy. So do we have 2 policies covering the same area, or are they both the same policy? And I would suggest, because we are looking at it from a legal standpoint, it should just probably be the equality policy, because it reflects the Equality Act 2010, and I think the other wording has a bit of negative connotation, and really what we're trying to achieve is to fulfil our legal obligations, I would have said, through that policy.
Thank you, Councillor. So in answer to that, the equality...
Sorry.
I actually found it quite difficult to find out whether we had an equality policy, and then suddenly it appears that we had one that was actually drafted 2025. So that's the title of it. The Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Policy is the title that they've given it. So that's why I've put it in there, because it isn't just an equality policy.
Right.
Yeah, there.
That point taken.
Yeah, but obviously the other point where we've got equality policy, that probably needs to be updated then. But
Yeah, I'll take that bit
I
out.
just feel that's probably a wrong title to use in the current climate, to be quite honest.
Any other questions or comments, members? No. There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is that committee endorse the new local code of governance. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendations. There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendations are agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 10 is the draft annual governance statement for 24-25. I now call upon Peter Catchpole, Corporate Director, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll make it brief. The annual governance statement, as you're all aware, is very much part of our statement of accounts that is subject to external audit. We're hopeful that this year, 24-25, we're back to having a full audit. We have already published the draft statement of accounts as we were required to by the 30th of June, and we had to include a draft annual governance statement in those set of accounts for the consultation period to begin, as we were instructed to by our external auditors. So this is very much draft, as are our statement of accounts, because they're subject to external audit, which we're hopeful will take place in October, as it stands at this moment in time. So the AGS has been largely put together by Deborah and myself, and has to be signed off by the leader and the chief exec, and basically demonstrates the things we do to achieve good governance. It does work with the local code of governance. We have revamped it, used the new headings for the 2025 update. There are action plans, there are improvements, because no one says we're perfect. But again, I will stress that this is subject to external audit, and therefore this will be brought back to a later committee once the audit's been completed. So I don't want to go through it line by line. I'm very happy to take questions, but I am stressing that it is draft. It has been published on our website, but it's actually going to be subject, as I've said 3 times, to external audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Could I have a proposer of this report? Councillor Booth, and a second? Councillor Christie, thank you. Now open the item for discussion. If you've got any comments or questions. Councillor Booth?
Thank you. So the page is 76. It's got the areas of further improvement to the council's governance. You've got item 3, which is the local decisions record to be introduced, capture all officer decisions to enhance transparency and record keeping. Do we have a level of what those decisions should be? Because otherwise you're just going to get potentially inundated with reams of paperwork every time an officer makes any type of decision. So I think it needs like to be quantified, as it were. Otherwise, technically, you'd need a record for every sort of decision they're making. So I think that just needs to be clarified.
I think that's a really good point, because we wouldn't want, you know, £1 for a cup of coffee, or I take that completely. So I think you're really talking about that being based on a monetary value.
Yeah, I guess monetary, or if it's got policy type, you know, strategic policy type impact, it's that type of thing where I think we need to say it's going to be at this level. Otherwise, as I say, you're just going to get drowned in paperwork, aren't you, potentially?
I think that's a really good point. I think we can work on that and put some more definition in, because as I said, this is draft, so we can bring it back here. If you have any guidance on what you think that should be, I was thinking that it would be in line with the constitution of officer decision and the value there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good starting point. I mean, because, like, for example, the call-in process, it probably ought to be at the same type of level as that, I would say.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, Peter, just one question. It's on the same page on there. I think it was action number 8, the one about enforced use of purchase orders to enhance financial management and commitments accounting. Is there a deadline or a timeline for that to happen?
There is. We want that to happen this financial year, because I don't know if this committee was aware, but we're having to move our financial system, Aggresso, to the cloud. So as part of that implementation, which is starting in October, we want to get people used to the fact that we're not going to process things without a purchase order. But obviously, again, there are exceptions to that, utility bills, that kind of thing that we can't have purchase orders for. But what we're doing is we're rolling that out now, so that when we come to the implementation, people are more used to it.
Any further comments, questions? No? There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the committee to approve the content for inclusion in the council's published statement of accounts for 24-25. Can you please raise your hand if you disagree with this recommendation? No, there are no raised hands, therefore the recommendations are agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 11 is the Internal Audit Annual Report and Opinion for 24-25. And I'll call upon Deborah Moss to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this is the annual report. So it's the culmination of all the work that we've done throughout the year. I'm required to give you this report and also to give an annual opinion, which then slips into the AGS that you've already seen. So this report covers everything we've done, whether that's internal audit engagements that have been carried out, or it might be additional work that we've done, like for DFGs or advice or something like that. It's trying to capture all of that work. There's a second sort of set of information that comes from the report, and that's to give you the details, the status of all the agreed audit actions that management are putting into place. And that tells you the status of them in terms of whether they've been implemented, whether they're overdue, or whether they're just open. You haven't got the full details of each of those actions. You have only just got the statistics for those. Lastly, there's the effectiveness review of the internal audit team, which is based upon the standards. And I've just updated the one from last year. So again, I don't propose to go through it all line by line. You can see that it gives you I'm required to give you a statement of our organisational independence to show that there's been no undue influence. The outturn, the most important part, I guess, from this is my opinion, which is that we have reasonable assurance over our governance, risk and control. Again, that's what feeds into the AGS. I think really if you go to Appendix A, that will tell you all the audits that have been completed, and I've tried to capture all the actions or the themes within those audit reports for you to see, because I'm mindful that you don't actually see the audit reports, but this is as good as that because it will give you a flavour of all those actions, hopefully all in the table. I don't think it's not worth me going through each of those individually, but if you've got any questions on any of them, then by all means ask. Again, the Appendix B is the statistics. So you can see most of those are now, by year, most of them are now completed. The ones that are outstanding are the 24-25, so we are still monitoring those. I can give you assurance that those are being taken to management team on a monthly basis, and they are being monitored by our team as well as management, and we report to you as well on that every quarter. So as long as we see a pattern of those being completed and moved into close, then everything is good. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Deborah. Can I have a proposer of this report, please? Councillor Christie and a seconder. Councillor Booth, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Booth.
This report is mainly relating to last year, isn't it? So, because obviously you give an opinion about the effectiveness of the audit function, and I know last meeting you discussed about resourcing. So I'm probably looking more forward to next year, but yeah, what is the, or this year, sorry, but it'll be next year when we consider the report. So, just wondering if we can have an update on that, and what impacts that's going to have looking forward.
So I can give you a sort of partial update on that. There's no definitive conclusion on it, but we have one of the employees that we have working in the transformation team for the last 4 years, I believe, has actually transferred over to audit. Unfortunately, it's only on a part-time basis, but it is a permanent basis as long as she wants to stay, because at the moment it's a trial. Yeah. So she's moved over. I have no reason to think that she won't be very good as an auditor at all. So the only difficulty is we have that it's just part-time, so we still have a residue of that resource, of that post, which we're currently considering what to do with. That's being discussed at management team, whether we're going to advertise it as a 0.4 or higher.
Yeah. Okay, so we've partly overcome the problem, but still need to. Yeah, which is true.
I think it is under constant review. You know, from this committee, the last few years we've had expensive interims, in which obviously we were keen to not continue with, as they do cost us a lot of money in the current environment. That's not what we want to do. So we were fortunate enough to get Deborah in as the head of internal audit. As Deborah said, we've now got Deborah as the only real full-time employee. We've got term time and this 0.6. So we have got a 0.4, but I think what we're looking to do is, obviously we're trying to get more and more risk-based on the audits, and with LGR on the horizon as well. So we're exploring options of maybe, sharing or some specialist resource coming in to do certain things. We had a focus on cyber security here a little while back as well. So we're still debating what to do with that 0.4. Because we could use some of that budget to bring in 1 or 2 specialists to do areas of what we consider high risk. But I think we need to come back to the committee with an updated status later on in the year, perhaps September, with an up-to-date audit, with an updated audit plan to match the resource. And again, if Deborah's telling me we can't deliver, the key thing for me is to deliver the opinion. Although I love being called reasonable and adequate by the internal audit people. But that's what we need to deliver to make sure that we get to that stage. So it is still under review, and actually Deborah and myself are having a meeting with Paul, the Chief Exec, just to decide how we're going to do that. But as long as we deliver the audit plan, and it's a robust audit plan that enables at the end of the year to deliver an opinion, I think that's what we're obviously the objective is. But it is a balancing act, as you know, Councillor Booth, but it is constantly under review, and we haven't fully resolved what we're going to do with that additional 0.4 yet.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Booth.
Just regarding the point on page 95 where it talks about the asset management plan, and it talks about the fact, I think, that basically the management team decided that they were going to decided it was no longer required. So I guess this goes to the point of how much pushback you get on recommendations from audit reports, because in the best will in the world, no audit team will be perfect. They won't always have a perfect understanding of things. And I think it's healthy to actually have challenge on some of the recommendations. But I think that's probably the first time I've ever seen that in a report, that an action's actually been sort of cancelled. I mean, I would have said probably rejected, might be the right terminology, but yeah, I'd just like to get a sort of broader.
Yeah, I think we used the word cancelled because it had been accepted originally,
Right.
rather than rejected at the reporting stage.
Yeah.
But it's just with the onset of LGR, things are being reconsidered, I suppose, which is, perfectly acceptable. I think possibly this will happen. There's certainly a lot of actions in there that have been postponed due to LGR, and I don't know whether that's just because of the time aspect or whether people will just start reconsidering what's the important thing to do here, or whether there's a better way of doing things or a more joined up way of doing things. But I hope it doesn't have too much impact on the agreed actions. I hope they still, pursue and go ahead.
But I guess that the point I'm trying to get at is how much pushback do you get on audit actions from management? How much debate is there? I mean, normally you'll produce a draft report and then you'll get feedback on it. So is there appropriate pushback where it is appropriate, or do actions just get accepted without any sort of challenge, I guess?
I would say, we don't issue the report and then look for discussion and agreement. It's done at the closing meeting, so there is a discussion of findings and then coming up with an agreed action, which is why we've swapped over from calling them recommendations to agreed actions. If they don't get agreed, they don't make the report, basically. That said, if there was something that we wanted put in place and it wasn't agreed by management, then it would get reported here. If we felt strongly enough about that, it's a two-way process, isn't it? Really, it depends what the risk is, what the control is. But no, it's just a healthy discussion of what's been found and what should be done about it. It doesn't mean that because audit think this is the control or this is the recommendation, it isn't necessarily the right one. Management may come up with something better or more suited to the risk, and whatever is agreed is what finds its way into the final report. If that answers the question.
Yep. No, it's. I think it's important to have that healthy discussion and debate. But often you find with people, they get an audit recommendation and they just accept it, even if it's not necessarily the right recommendation. But no, I've certainly been in meetings where we've discussed actions and recommendations in my previous roles, and it can be challenging. It can be a lot of to and fro-in, but I think that is appropriate to make sure it's proportionate, the actions that are delivered.
I think to further that, I think we give Deborah plenty of scope to raise issues. I meet regularly with Deborah. We've now set up a corporate governance group which involves Deborah, myself, Amy, the monitoring officer. There's quite a few of us come together, so those issues will be discussed if they think we're if we think there's a clash or a disagreement that needs to be resolved. They're raised, as Deborah said, at management team in front of the chief exec on a regular basis, and it would come here as well if there was any areas of real dispute or disagreement that we couldn't get traction on. But I think in specific, the asset management plan, they're usually in place for 30 years. So, and the time taken to do that, it doesn't mean we haven't got actions to manage our assets, but a 30-year asset plan usually would look at improvements, enhancements, all sorts of things. So I think it's more of a make, do and mend kind of scenario rather than looking at anything bigger at this point in time. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? There are no further speakers. Therefore, the recommendation is for the committee to consider the outturn for internal audit for 24-25, which highlights the audits that were completed and their associated assurance ratings. Also, the additional assurances gained from the other sources of work completed in-house and externally to support the annual audit opinion. And the head of internal audit opinion on the adequacy and the effectiveness of governance, risk and internal control processes. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation. No, there are no raised hands, therefore the recommendations are approved. Agenda item 12 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee annual report. So it's down to me to do this report. Just bear with me. I'm not really going to say anything on this report. I assume you've all read it. Hopefully, can anyone propose this report for you, please? Councillor Christie and a seconder. Councillor Mrs. French, thank you. The item's open for discussion. If you've got any comments or questions? No? Okay. There are no speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the committee to agree the Audit and Risk Management Committee annual report for 24-25 to be forwarded to the full council meeting in September. Is that correct? Yep. Please raise your hand if you disagree with this. No? Thank you. There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendation is agreed. Agenda item 13 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee work plan. Are there any questions or comments on this work plan? Peter?
I was just going to say, at the moment, the September one looks quite light. I think we will be revising this as we get to understand a bit more. External audit has thrown us out a bit, so we've had to swap some of the meetings around to fit their timetable rather than our normal timetable. So we will put some more thought into this, because the 29th of September is going to be a very light meeting if we don't add one or two other things in. We won't make things up to put into here, but we just need to do a review of the work plan.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Mrs. French and then Gavin.
Looking at the future dates, can you tell me why we're having one on the 9th of February and then another one the following month? Is that because it's the end of the financial year? Because it's normally 2 months apart.
I think we'll probably have either or, depending on timings of audit results, etc., etc. I think that's what we did last year. Mm-hmm. We had the February one, then we cancelled the March one, didn't we? Yeah. But I think if you can just make a note of those dates, and we'll firm up closer to the time when we know exactly what the position is with the external audit for 24-25.
Councillor Booth?
Well, I was just going to say, why don't we agree that anything for the 29th of September is considered a November meeting? I mean, that would seem to be proactive, gives us more time to work. Well, the only item is really the audit plan, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the only difficulty, is the audit plan hasn't yet been properly approved, as it were. So, I mean, I can circulate that outside of the meeting ahead, for if that's what you want.
Yeah, I think we can circulate that. I mean, that's not an issue. I mean, it's obviously going to be a work in progress anyway, isn't it? So that's sort of more the formal adoption.
Yeah. I mean, you saw the original one that came to committee before, and it would just be a diluted version of that, I would imagine.
Councillor Mrs. French? Is everybody happy with that recommendation of Councillor Booth? Yeah? Are you happy with that, Peter? Yeah. Yep, take that. Thank you. Therefore, the work plan is noted for information. Agenda item 14 is items of topical interest. I believe there are none? No? Okay. Agenda item 15, items which the chairman has under item 5 deemed urgent. There are none. This marks the end of the meeting, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.